Hey, what's up, everybody? It's ya boy 13 back at it again, reading another lewd fanfiction. Yeah! Woo! This time we're reading chapter 16.5 of SAO. Hold on, SAO. Alrighty, let's get cracking. Alright. Chapter 16.5. Asuna plopped down naked on the sofa and glared defiantly at me. Fuck, Kirito, hurry up and take your clothes off, she said in an authoritative tone. What? We're continuing? It would be stupid if we stopped here. I hurriedly complied, opening the window indicated by Asuna. I toggled off the menu option buried deep within the menu. Because of the hurried start, there was no romantic mood to speak of. Sitting on the bed, which was slightly too small for the two of us, we slowly did as much as the system would allow. The dim blue moonlight flickered through the window, casting complex shadows on the bed. Six, Since Salemburg has no marketplace, the townspeople disappear at night. The only thing that I could hear was the faint whispering of the lake and my alarm like heartbeat, which seemed to echo around the room. Oh, God. Um, By this time, Asuna and I had removed all of our clothing, which had been kneeling on the bed. Kneeling? Oh, we had been kneeling on the bed in front of one another for about 2.5 minutes. I couldn't read Asuna's expression as she balled up her fists on her knees and looked down. I thought that I should probably be the one to take first action in this situation, but not being able to predict the outcomes of any of my choices, I sat in petrified silence. I considered what would happen if I were to yell out sorry and re equipped minimal clothing at Mach speed before escaping out of the room. Would she say, I guess it can't be helped, and forgive me for when we meet again tomorrow? There's no way she would. Remembering back at the distant past, I was only 14 the first time that I had ever logged into SAO. The winter of the 8th grade. I don't want to really recall how I was at the time, but I sacrificed oh my god, all of my sexual energy that starts to awaken in all boys around that age in order to immerse myself into games. As a result, I had never been in a situation where I would be alone with a girl in her room. Obviously, I had also never been naked with a girl before. To tell you the truth, I would have liked Asuna, who who I thought was probably a few years older than me and thus had expertise in this area, take the lead. However, it seemed that everyone in SAO, including her, viewed me as being older than I really was. Since I had never denied any of it, there's no way that I could say it to her in this situation. Sorry, but I'm actually. I strengthened my resolve, and even if I didn't have the knowledge or experience, I had never loved or had felt such intense feelings for someone I have for Asuna. A fucking I. Ever since SAO had started, there was numerous times when I was in a situation where I had told myself, "You can't run away from here, no matter what." But here I had to muster up greater willpower than that I was extended, or that as I extended my right hand and moved my body forward. My fingertips slowly touched the gentle curve that was Asuna's shoulder. Her body quivered sharply. I slowly traced a path from the line of her collarbone to the nape of her neck. Asuna let a soft moan as she closed her eyes. The blood rushed to her cheeks and her eyebrows furrowed. For some time, I watched Asuna's response in delight as I touched all over the place. Slightly excited by her fresh reactions, I went a bit overboard as I kept my fingertip at a point where I was just barely touching her and continued to slowly glide across her skin. I crawled down her arms, which were firmly hiding both breasts, circled around her stomach, and reversed the direction up her arms again. Ah! Oh! Every time my finger moved, Asuna's body would shake and a soft moan would leak out. After caressing her entire body, I put my right hand's finger under her small chin and lifted her head up. With my index finger, I diligently traced her wet, shining, cherry-covered lip. No! Not just your finger! A soft, blushing Asuna opened her eyes slightly and looked at me pleadingly. Kiss me! I silently moved my face closer. Asuna's lips parted slightly as if they were could no longer wait. Wait, hold on. As if they could not wait any longer. But instead of fastening our lips together, I softly poked her lip with the tip of my tongue. As if seeking me out, Asuna stuck out her tongue, but I restrained myself and moved to avoid her before softly touching her with the tip of my tongue. Ah! Ah! Asuna let out an irritated sound of both anticipation as I need and need as I abruptly plunged my tongue into her mouth. I violently swished around my tongue. The tactile senses in SAO are just like the sense of taste, pre-programmed and activated in accordance to the situation. When you consider this, then the only conclusion that one can draw is that the feeling of deep kiss must have been programmed in. Well, it's not like I've ever experienced that in real life, but an indescribably bewitching feeling assaulted my nerves. My tongue entwined Asuna's and I forcefully sucked on it. Oh my God. As I felt all the strength go out of her body. Wow. Her eyes were moist and dim, and she was breathing erratically as I took my tongue out of her mouth and then proceeded to lick down her neck, nearing her ear and the hollow of her collarbone. Hollow? What? When I eventually reached the soft valleys that were the top of her breasts, which had been hidden up till now, her whole body leapt and twitched, her arms gripped together, and she shook her head from side to side. Asuna, move your arms. But I want to see your breasts, Asuna. I caught her wrists, which were crossed together, and pulled them apart as I slowly licked and sucked my way towards the peak of the white breast, which was gradually being revealed. Ah, no! Asuna's arms were finally at her sides as her twin peaks were revealed to my eyes. The swells, which were usually hidden by the loose-fitting knight's clothing and breastplate, were bigger than I had imagined. Full and protruding sharply forward, at the tips were a pair of nipples which were difficult to distinguish from the surrounding area. Standing impertinently in a cone-shaped form, regrettably, since the entire room was currently bathed in the blue glow of the moonlight, and Asuna, turn the light on, or turn on the light. What? No, don't. Having accepted the rejection of my request, I sucked on her left nipple into my mouth. Ah! Ignoring the shrill voice that Asuna let out at the sudden attack, I chewed on the hard nub with my lips as my tongue rolled around the stiff tip. Ah! Ah! No, no, no! I firmly held Asuna's right hand as I tried to push me away as she cried out, while her body convulsed and moved my left hand to the other breast. I squeezed her peak between my fingers, then gently used the nail of my index finger to stimulate the tip of the nipple. Ah! Oh! As I tortured my breasts, oh boy, this is terrible. Asuna's convulsions and sweet cries rose in intensity. Going a bit overboard, I bit down on the protruding object in my mouth and somewhat violently began to chew on it, while at the same time the thumb and index finger of my left hand painfully twisted the other nipple. Ah! Whoa! No! No way! Asuna's body suddenly stiffened, her arms, which now encircled the back of my head, and tightened their grip. No, no, no! I'm just in my breast. Oh fuck, no. I'm. She was unable to speak after that, letting out a hoarse, high-pitched cry from the depths of her throat. Asuna twitched and her body jumped once before collapsing against me. She was still breathing heavily, her body intermittently convulsed slightly. Asuna, just now. I know it's nothing. I've never had anything like that happen until now. Until now? Asuna ducked her body and looked down in an embarrassed manner. It's nothing. Nothing at all. Tell me. I moved my left hand over Asuna's left breast as she. Hold on. It's the wrong hand. As she leaned against me and grasped her nipple before before pulling on it. No, stop. No more with the breasts. What do you mean by until now? Asuna spoke haltingly in a crying voice that was once again mixed with sweet moans. The fuck? Speaking this about the ethic code off. After I learned about it, I did it a couple of times alone. What did you do? Oh, I'm thinking about Kirito playing with my breasts and down below. Talking about her own fantasies seems to have increased Asuna's masochistic side. Her breathing was gradually becoming ragged as she clung to me. Down below? Like around here? I gently moved the hand that had been abusing her breasts downward. I stroked her tense stomach, then ever so slowly moved in that direction. I went over the slight swell of her abdomen, and when my fingers reached the entrance of the two mounds, Asuna gasped as her body shook. No! I had used my index finger and the middle finger of my left hand to stimulate the area around her, while taking care not to touch her center, or touch the center. I enjoyed the sensation of squeezing the two mounds together, then pulling them apart. Asuna knelt down, putting down both of her arms around me and moaned while burying her face in my neck as my fingers moved about, causing her body to jump and twitch. There, no! The voice gradually became hoarse as she shook her head and wiggled her body. I can't! Thinking that I was teasing her too much, I gradually moved my middle finger towards the center. As Asuna let out a remarkably loud cry, my finger was enveloped in a slimy sensation. That place was seemingly endless, so hot and moist and indescribably soft that I involuntarily stirred it with two fingers. No! No! Asuna cried out, and her body started to shake and jump. Without the regard of that, I kneaded the little knobs that were peeking out from the top of the slit with my thumb while spreading it open with two fingers. Ah! Ah! It appeared Asuna could no longer speak as she dug her nails into my back and arched her back as far as she could. No, I can't take it anymore! But in another sense, I was also at my limit. I wanted to see every single part of Asuna so badly that I pushed her down onto the bed and grabbed her legs, spreading them apart. What? Asuna came out of a hazy state and bucked her body to escape as she realized that she was in an extremely embarrassing position. But there was no way that I was going to loosen my grip now. What? Kirito, don't look so closely. Asuna. I raised my head and looked steadily into Asuna's eyes. Should we turn on the light? No! Asuna forcefully rejected my suggestion as she shook her crimson red face. Giving up, I devoted myself to examining Asuna's hidden place.
The soft and fluffy pubes were pure white and smooth, without a single hair growing there. This was to say, rather than a preference of the developers, a limitation of the system itself. Hair-type objects are of extremely heavy category. As a result, aside from the hair on her head and beards, there were absolutely no hair anywhere on the bodies of SAO players. 13, you might want to mute yourself. In between the two soft mounds, there was a single slit, and further into that were the light-colored folds. From time to time, clear fluid dripped out and flowed towards Asuna's anus before it turning into beads of light and disappearing. Oh, I see what you're going through now. Whether it was from embarrassment or loss of strength, Asuna had stopped struggling, so I took my hand off her right foot and slowly spread the slit open. Asuna's eyes turned vacant as she moaned softly. Inside the slit, compared to the information that I had received from the net in the real world, was an unusually simple design with what I thought was peach-colored membranes spreading smoothly on the inside and bottom. The vaginal opening, which tirelessly produced clear fluid, was quietly throbbing, and in the upper part where the slit closed together was a little protrusion, a little protrusion peeked its head out. Within SAO, the male players must have had at least once or twice racked their brains in wondering what part of the female players looked like, but I had experienced a certain kind of emotion, having just discovered the answer to this question. Of course, in my own lower half, there was also a certain thing, which, having swelled to its limits, was seeking release. But this was the first time since I had entered SAO that it had become like this. Whew. There was a somewhat interesting story concerning all of this. I apologize for digressing, but when SAO was under development, the Argus company had an internal closed alpha test during which they reasoned that since players would have no use for genitals, it would not be necessary to objectify it. However, in reality, they found out that most of the male testers would experience a certain amount of severe anxiety. Even so, while there was no problem when playing for several hours, when they conducted consecutive tests over a 48-hour period, they found that most of the male testers who attended this trial period were unable to stand not having their genitals and would just give up. So it was from the beta testing phase that the genital parts were implemented out of a sense of necessity, since it seemed like there was also a part of reason why SAO players were not allowed to change their characters' genders. However, even if you had your genital parts, the question that I had prior to the official start of the game, meaning before the incident, was whether or not there would be any anxiety over a proper lack of function, or over the lack of proper function. I myself had agonized repeatedly on multiple occasions over the inability to release my pent-up energy, but now I saw that if the ethics code or whatever was disabled, then functionality would probably even ejaculation would be possible. While feeling like I had missed out on a lot by not knowing all of this until now, at this point though, I faced a new question. Having the ethics code release function basically meant that online virtual sex hadn't been planned with the release of the game. SAO had so many underage players as myself, so no matter how I thought about it, the function was sure to cause a lot of social outcry. Meanwhile, while teasing Asuna's cute slit with my fingertips, I raised my head and posed that very question to her. What? Although she had a spaced out look in her silky eyes, and her answer was punctuated by her heavy breathing, Asuna's serious disposition kicked in as she answered me. That they plan to use SAO's system in order to provide personal sex experience. We're probably linked with that function. I see. In other words, it's probably one of those delicate arrangements. Well, enough with the chit chat. I used my left hand to open Asuna up as wide as possible. She wasn't immobilized anymore, but Asuna let out a sweet cry with both of her legs spread wide in the air. I brought my face close and gently pushed my tongue toward the little hole in the center. As Asuna shook her head from side to side as she cried out, I softly stimulated the entrance to that hole with my tongue as I pushed my finger in and out. No! Not that! Every time Asuna convulsed, a large amount of fluid would make a sticky sound on my tongue as it leaked out of her vagina. Having pushed my tongue into her hole and enjoyed the feeling of her constricting around me, I pushed myself up over Asuna. I was ready, swollen to my limit, and felt like I would end up coming if I continued to explore Asuna's body anymore. While softly playing with her pert nipple, I covered Asuna's lips with my own and softly whispered, "Asuna, please let me smash." Asuna nodded vigorously as she let out a hot breath. "Yes, make me full with your thing, Kirito." Oh, feeling slightly dizzy at the thought of having that straight-laced invincible warrior tell me that with such a tearful face, I pressed myself against Asuna's moistness. My penis caught onto the entrance of her vagina as I moved it up and down. Asuna firmly gripped my shoulders with her arms as she squeezed, her eyes closed, and furrowed her eyebrows. Even in the pale blue darkness of the room, I could see that her whole body was flushed and beads of sweat shined everywhere. When I placed my hands at Asuna's sides, her hips moved slightly forward. I felt a slight resistance, but then with a popping cessation, half of my penis was swallowed up inside of Asuna. Even with just that, Asuna let out a scream as she arched her body to its limit. At the same time, my breath caught and I felt a numbness spreading from my penis to the rest of my body. Having pushed my entire length into Asuna, I let my desires take over as I continued to penetrate her bit by bit. How long is this fucking dick? Like, seriously. They're acting like it's 2 fucking feet long. Asuna continued to scream as she continued to vigorously shake her head while her body shook. Although I briefly wondered if it hurt, I was no longer able to stop my hips from moving as my penis continued to plunge into Asuna's deepest parts with a wet slapping noise. Eventually, my penis pushed all the way into the root of Asuna's vagina, while she was the woman who I knew best and loved the most. The crazy thought that I was deep inside Einkrat's top idol at the moment was spinning around my mind, making me go crazy. I somehow managed to calm my breath as I put my mouth close to Asuna's ear and said, "It's all inside. Does it hurt?" "No, so hot. I'm gonna melt." Asuna answered me in a thin, high voice as she shook her head. "Kirito, so much of you inside me." My neighbors are gonna wake up. I also felt like melting from the incredible heat that I was experiencing. My penis, which was tightly gripped by Asuna, was continuously sending heat waves up my back that exploded into fireworks in my head. As I was aware of Asuna's moans becoming higher and higher as I was immobilized, struggling against the sensation that threatened to overwhelm me. As if in anticipation, her slit also continued to tightly massage me with its convulsions. "No way! I'm again!" Asuna's voice, which sounded as if she was becoming delirious from the heat, was changing into a meltingly sweet sound. And "No, not again! I'm coming! She threw her head back with a jerk, screaming loudly as Asuna climaxed for the second time. At the same time, my penis was squeezed with an incredible pleasure, and to my horror, I felt a raging sense boiling up inside me, seeking release. I bit my lip and fought against that feeling, supported by the thought that I couldn't relax when we hadn't even reciprocated once. I was somehow able to quell the urge. Panting heavily, I embraced Asuna's body, which was limp from orgasm. I knew I didn't have much time left, so I violently pulled all the way back to the opening of her vagina before pushing it in all the way once more. Thrust, smack. Our bodies flew about. Asuna's eyes flew open and let out a shriek. "No, if you do that, I'm gonna go crazy!" I was once again forced to stop while deep inside of Asuna, the hot, soft sensation surrounding me as the throbbing of the folds penetrated my entire being. Asuna had come several times already, and if we stayed like this, I would eventually end up eventually. But I didn't feel like that it would be a very good way to finish, so after thinking of a moment, I gently began to shifting my body. Lifting up a drowsy-looking Asuna's body. Okay, just for a second. So this man's been fucking this girl for like 2 hours. He hasn't done anything yet. He's too badass to come because Reki Kawahara thinks otherwise. And now Asuna's just fucking dead. Okay, Continuing onward, lifting up her drowsy body, I moved underneath. Eventually, the two of us switched positions, with me on my back and Asuna in a mounted position on top of me. The dead girl's doing the work. As soon as Asuna realized what sort of position she was in, her face turned even redder as she shook her head from side to side. No, this is embarrassing. Asuna, you try moving. What? Okay. Asuna blushed shyly as she nodded and began to gently rock her body. I'm sorry that I'm the only one feeling good. So you could come too. Fuck you, Reki. A sticky sound was coming from the slit that was being pierced by my penis. Asuna's movements were minimal, but a powerfully numbing feeling that was spread throughout my body again. Right when I thought, at this rate, I'm going to come right away. Her voice rang. Her voice was once again mixed with the sound of arousal. Asuna bit down on the fingers of her right hand as she moved her hips up and down. Why am I like this? Like this? Asuna's long, chestnut-colored hair flew into the air every time she shook her head. Beads of sweat also flew about, turning into light before disappearing. I'm sorry, Kirito. I'm coming again! For the seventh time? Okay. Asuna threw her body back while drawing out the last part of her sentence as she breathed, convulsed 3 times. Her breast, which was sticking out in front of her, danced in time with these motions. I was in no position to pause and admire the sight of Asuna with her eyes scrunched up closed and her teeth gritted together, looking incredibly cute, yet horribly lewd at the same time. As Asuna's vagina gripped my penis tightly, I was once again assaulted with the powerful urge to come. Thinking that I wouldn't be able to resist this time, I instinctively pushed into Asuna's core with reckless abandon, gripping her hips with my hands as I shoved my penis in as far as I could before pulling out again. Being suddenly assaulted right after coming, all Asuna could do was frantically writhe about as I took her hand, which was extended towards me, and linked our fingers together. Every time I stirred up Asuna's insides, our overflowing juices would fly out as the place of our joining melted in endless heat. Amazing! Amazing! Her bouncing breast also sent large amounts of sweat flying about. Asuna was letting out deliriously sweet moans with a completely melted look on her face. I'm coming! Yes. Yes! Let it out! Kirito, let it out! Let out a lot! As I shoved myself into Asuna, releasing all the pent-up sensations that I had stretched to its limits. Asuna! As I felt my hot sperm gushing deep into Asuna as she trebled in yet another climax. 2 years worth of semen made a glopping noise as it flowed endlessly into Asuna. Every time my penis twitched, fireworks would go off in my head. After receiving all that I had to give her, Asuna's strength gave out and she fell on top of me. I gently embraced Asuna while she continued to gasp and convulse as if she was being stimulated by the fluids inside her body, and my consciousness dimmed. Is that the whole thing? Hold on, sorry, this thing cut me off here. Just trying to make sure. Yep, all right, that's it. Okay, so before you cut the recording, can we just talk about this for a second? This thing is even more. This thing is even more fucking insulting to Asuna than Reki Kawahara could have. This is more insulting towards Asuna.
This is literally just rape, bro.
Not only is it rape, Eon, please keep this in the recording. Not only is this rape, but the fact that his penis is 2 feet big and it takes him 3 or 4 hours before he comes.
Dude, he has a fucking horse's penis.
Reki Kawahara creates all the characters, and then they're technically all OCs.
Not only are they all OCs, Reki Kawahara, I'm pretty sure is just Kirito. I'm pretty sure he thinks they're the same people, because only them can be yes, my main character must be fucking hold on for 4 hours and just overcome the urge to copulate by just saying, no, I can't yet. I need to make this work even more. Even though this woman has orgasmed 5 times, I need to keep holding on for another hour and a half.
Fucking die.
God.
And I see where the meme 2 years of semen glopping comes from.
Yeah, that's the famous line.
Doesn't semen die over time?
Oh fuck! I didn't put this in my fucking incognito mode. Fuck. Anyway.
Slip, don't talk to your neighbors tomorrow or ever again. You literally sound like Johnny Young Bosch when you play as a young character.
In a good way or bad way?
When you were moaning.
I can't tell if it's a good thing or not because I don't know who Johnny Young Bosch
I
is.
have no regrets, Sion, because I didn't go
He
into
actually
that
played
mood
Lelouch
area.
in the English dub.
I fucking loved whenever I did the sound
But
clips.
that's
It was
not the
amazing.
voice that I'm thinking of.
You put me in a rough position, a literal rough position, by doing like a fucking perfect Boston accent for Asuna and just screaming your fucking head off. Like as if no one cared.
Bruh.
Yes.
I was literally losing my mind. Like
Why do you
over
think I had
you
to
reading
cut
this.
myself in the middle of the fucking thing where it's like he keeps pushing inching in for like 6 paragraphs, he's still inching in. I'm like, you ran out of inches like 5 paragraphs ago, bro.
No, his